hearing. One of the members we saw doing that joins us now. Congressman Adam Schiff is a member of the January 6th investigation. He, of course, is also chair of the House Intelligence Committee, and he's standing by to talk with us now from the Capitol. Mr. Chairman, Congressman Schiff, thank you so much for being here tonight. I know this is a busy and a big night.
Well, it's good to be with you, and I thought it was a very powerful night. I think the chairman laid out the historical nature of what we went through that day, the unprecedented attempt to interfere with the transfer of power. And then I think the vice chair importantly wove together the narrative about these multifaceted efforts to overturn the election, the pressure on state legislatures and legislators, the pressure on the vice president, the continued pushing of these false claims of fraud, even when the president's own attorney general said they were BS, and how it led to that day. And then to hear Officer Edwards' testimony, I can't imagine a more powerful refutation of the lie that this was a normal tourist day, that this was legitimate political discourse. And so we did, I hope, show the country just a bit of the mountain of evidence that we have. And gave the country a sense of what lies ahead in our future hearings.
Congressman Schiff, there's a historical importance to this which defies both politics and party affiliation. This is also happening in a partisan and political environment. We, after all, are holding these hearings as part of a congressional investigation. That said, there was a provocative piece of evidence described tonight by Liz Cheney about unnamed Republican members of Congress. She said during her opening statement, Republican Congressman Scott Perry was involved in trying to get Jeffrey Clark appointed as Attorney General, which was described as an effort to try to get the Justice Department to use lies to put the weight of the department behind the effort to steal the election result for President Trump. She said Representative Perry has refused to testify here. As you will see, he contacted the White House in the weeks after January 6th to seek a presidential pardon. Multiple other Republican congressmen also sought presidential pardons for their roles in attempting to overturn the 2020 election. We have seen some things pointing at this in the past. I've never seen it put that bluntly before. Is the implication of this evidence that the committee has collected that members of Congress, Republican members of Congress, committed what they believe to be crimes in this plot and therefore sought pardons from the president before he left office?
Well, look, I think the fact that members of Congress were interested in trying to get a preemptive pardon for their role in the effort to overturn the election tells you a lot about their consciousness of guilt. If they thought that what they were doing was above board, then, of course, there would be no need for a pardon. And, you know, this is part of the reason we wanted these members to testify. It's probably part of the reason why they refused to testify. But nonetheless, it gives the public a sense of just the depth of information we've been able to accumulate, the scores of witnesses. You saw some of that deposition testimony tonight. The real challenge for our committee, you know, frankly, is how do we choose what is most important to share with the public? And I think that what we will try to do is make available in these hearings as much as we can, and then provide in online resources for others a wealth of other material for you and other members of the press and public to scrutinize.
Congressman, is it clear to you and other members of the committee what the exact witness lineup will be for the 7 hearings that have been described? We heard Vice Chair Liz Cheney today describe the rough topics and rough areas of evidence that will be covered in each of the next 6 hearings that will happen during the month of June. Is it clear to you now, is it actually a settled matter who the live witnesses will be, or is some of that still under negotiation?
You know, I think many of the witnesses, if not most of the witnesses, are already settled upon or arrived at. But, you know, there may be changes among the witnesses, new witnesses or others that are replaced. So I don't know that it's going to be static. We're continuing to learn new information, continuing to talk to new witnesses, and going back to some of the witnesses we've interviewed now that we have more information. So I don't want to say that it's fixed in place. but we certainly, I think, have lined up most of the witnesses in this set of hearings. Now, this may not be the last of the hearings as well.
Congressman Schiff, it's Joy Reid. You know, the footage that we saw, as incredibly disturbing as it was, sort of begs the question of how coordinated this effort was on the inside of the Capitol. We saw people roaming throughout the Capitol and chanting Speaker Pelosi's name and seeming to hunt individual members and leadership in that way. There's been implication in the past from some members that fellow members of Congress assisted in some way in planning or providing logistics, perhaps even directions in terms of where to go inside the Capitol by doing tours. Will we get that kind of information and evidence through these hearings?
You know, I can't go into too many specifics. You know, we have investigated what role any member or members of Congress may have played in the run-up to that day or on that day. We've investigated the issue of tours, potentially tours or a tour involving a member or members. I'm not at this point authorized to go into that evidence, but it is part of the body of work that we've been able to uncover and we'll be sharing. I don't want to overstate or understate it, but this is just a part of what we'll be presenting to the public.
And what would be the potential implication if a member or members did participate in providing logistical information? We know this is not a trial. This is not a criminal proceeding. It's informational. It's for us to know the history of what happened. But could a member like that, can you imagine a member who is exposed theoretically in these hearings continuing to serve in Congress unimpeded?
Well, look, it's inexplicable to me how members of Congress, seeing what took place on January 6th, and we were, of course, there, and those police officers saved our lives. It's inexplicable to me that so many of my Republican colleagues could go right back onto that House floor, knowing how many Capitol police officers had been beaten and injured, and pick up where they left off, trying to overturn the election. So there's a lot that, frankly, I can't understand. Our job will be to expose all of the conduct of that day and what led to it. In terms of remedies that the Justice Department may have, that is ultimately a decision for the Attorney General. But our role is really one of protecting the public, of looking at what took place, who was involved, holding those accountable by exposing their misconduct, and then proposing reforms to protect us going forward.
Congressman Schiff, it's Lawrence O'Donnell. I'm going to assume that most people who work at the Justice Department watched this hearing tonight, even those working in civil divisions and environmental areas that have nothing to do with the work you're doing. But there would be people watching it who do have overlaps with the work you're doing. Do you believe that those people working at the Justice Department tonight learned things in your hearing that they did not know?
I'm certain that they learned things that they didn't know because, you know, some of the material that we presented and much of the material that we've accumulated is part of our investigation. It's not part of the Justice Department's investigation. And I'm sure they are watching it carefully, and they should watch it carefully. I would hope that they're doing their own investigation and they're being as aggressive and diligent about it as we are. Ultimately, we have very limited authority in terms of what the Justice Department does. We have the most authority, Lawrence, as you know, when someone is in contempt of Congress. And we've made 4 referrals, and the Department has only been willing to go forward with 2 of them. I hope that with respect to the events that we're going to be sharing information with the public about over the next few weeks, that the Justice Department, if they haven't uncovered this evidence themselves, is paying very close attention, and that they will follow the evidence wherever it leads, as the Attorney General has said that he will. After all, you know, a federal judge, as we again quoted this evening, in California, has already found on the basis of the limited evidence that he has seen that the former president and others around him likely violated multiple federal laws.
Congressman, it's Nicole Wallace. One of the first things that Congresswoman Liz Cheney said in her opening remarks was this. As you will see in the hearings to come, President Trump believed his supporters at the Capitol, and I quote, "We're doing what they should be doing." This is what he told his staff as they pleaded with him to call off the mob, to instruct his supporters to leave. Are you prepared now to share which witness said that? And will that witness testify either on video or live in these hearings?
I'm not prepared to make that kind of a disclosure. I certainly would expect that we'll be presenting, the sources of different information so that the public can understand how we know what we know. I think that's an important part of telling the story. But at this point, I can't speak for the chair and vice chair in terms of particular witnesses or disclose the sources of some of our information.
Congressman Adam Schiff, chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, member of the January 6th investigation. Sir, thank you for your time tonight. This was quite an undertaking for you and all the members of the committee. I know you're back at it with that morning hearing on Monday. We will hopefully speak to you then, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.